Metropolitans, let's try this again. Today on Mets Digest, it looks like the New York Mets are entering their post-Alonso era. Andy Martino and others have corroborated that the Mets and Alonso's camp can't reach a deal that people love in tandem. Plus, even though the international signing period is young, the team has already made its first slew of news. We're going to talk about that on this edition of Mets Digest. What is going on, everybody? My name is Flobo Boyce, and I am one half of the team here at Mets Digest. And even though we battle everything from ups and downs and technical difficulties, myself and Mike D'Angelo work tirelessly to give you the news and notes you need. So if you're doing me a favor, if you're watching this right now, you're liking this, you don't want to be part of that not subscribed crew, be part of that subscribed crew, hit that video like, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you comment below. And thanks to everyone else who watched the previous version of this story, who really let me know and kept me on my toes. All right, let's talk about the first story there up top. Pete Alonso is someone that whether you like him or you don't like him, you know he really was an impactful hand to the Mets organization. He was the torchbearer after the mid to 2010s where we had that strong run in 15 and in 16, having those less than stellar seasons. Pete Alonso really looked like he was going to be part of the future. But a couple hours ago, as I record this version of this story, there was a tweet by Andy Martino over at SNY TV that really broke down what was happening over with the Mets organization. Now, just a little bit of backstory, and we'll go backwards over the past 36 hours and see how we got here. But if you look at the idea of the going back and forth, 2 seasons ago, there was the extension that Alonso turned down. I will never knock a person for turning down an extension request. Got to bet on yourself, but sometimes betting on yourself doesn't work. And so there really was the 3-year deal that's worth $90 million. That was, as of last week, the deal that was on the table. But then at the beginning of the week, there was the counter deal that didn't have a monetary value attached that was rejected by the team. And then, as I understand it, the Mets offered another deal after that deal, and that was also rejected, pending this from Andy Martino. He writes, the Mets have pivoted to Plan B post-Alonso. They now consider it the most likely outcome that Alonso will sign elsewhere. They added Winker, will add a reliever, and possibly a top one. This is a similar approach to what the Yankees did post-Soto, spreading funds around the roster. Mike D'Angelo will definitely have more backstory about the Winker acquisition or the re-signing of Jesse Winker, but it is cool to note that the Mets are really being more savvy with their money. Because I understand an ownership group ago would have probably gave Pete a sweetheart deal, similar to what Brandon Nimmo got for his deal a couple of years ago. But it does seem David Stearns does not play that game as what have you done for me lately. And what they plan to do is now look at how to strengthen the team from the inside out, especially when it comes to the pitching. But if you're watching the news over the past 36 hours, this was something that was bound to happen. Just one starts off with the Post report, which gets referenced, and that starts the cascade of why we thought there really was going to be a decision time today. I'm just surprised of the actual decision that was made. John Heyman and Joel Sherman write, while the sides, this is actually written on the 15th, so about yesterday, while the sides are said to be making progress, or at least in the structure of a proposed deal that's expected to be for 3 years and include at least one opt-out, there was no word by Wednesday that the sides have closed a substantial financial hurdle that's hung over these high-profile talks regarding the star free agent first baseman. And the Mets have let Alonso's camp know they need a decision, and soon. And so I understand that. That's why I understood that there would probably be Pete signing, but it doesn't seem to be the case. On whatever the two sides can do to make a deal, they want to make sure they leave themselves enough time and options to pivot elsewhere prior to spring training. And that also refers to an article as well about going back and forth, trying to see what the options are. If Pete gets picked up by another team, that team will love to have him sometime before pitchers and catchers have to report, which is about, depending on the franchise, about 25 days from now. But that begat a report from ESPN Plus that really goes into the positive of Pete Alonso to really weigh the actual options that Pete has. Now, if you remember, about a month ago, there was that December weekend where it looked like it was first baseman roulette. Christian Walker got a new address. Paul Goldschmidt got a new address. The Texas Rangers signed Jake Berger. Like, it just got really wild. And so when you think about if the Mets aren't going to be the home for Pete, and Pete's definitely an elite level player, whether or not he plays for Queens or not, where's he going to go? But in doing that, Dave Schoenfeld at ESPN really broke down the positives. And I won't read all of this, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So he says, indeed, there are some things to like about Alonso that suggest he might be able to maintain this level of offensive production. His bat speed remains elite, ranking in 93rd percentile. And he obviously hits the ball hard, and that shows his plate discipline. Despite his chase rate woes, is still pretty much up there. His power should translate to most stadiums. There is a predictability of Alonso's power. He's one of the only 3 players with at least 30 home runs in each of the past 3 seasons, and he has averaged 40. The other 5, Judge, Ohtani, Schwarber, Alvarez, and Seager. Now that is elite company, and that is something any team would want. But who will be still in the market this late in the offseason? A lot of people were pointing at Seattle, and they definitely need some middle-of-the-lineup power, but the only chip they have is Luis Castillo, who, while I do think will probably be ending up elsewhere if I were to speculate at this time, would actually cost a team money in acquiring Alonso when the Seattle Mariners are looking to shed payroll. So over at The Athletic, one of the articles that Will Sammon wrote yesterday, before this impasse between the team and Alonso came to pass, he talked about other teams that were in the market and says, Pete Alonso's free agency is reaching a critical juncture. Alonso's market is heating up with 3 teams, including the Toronto Blue Jays, the forever bridesmaids, engage in discussions for power-hitting first baseman. League sources says if the Blue Jays landed Alonso, they also prefer to keep Guerrero Jr. A person familiar with the club's thinking said Guerrero played 12 games at third base last year, and he and Alonso can serve as the club's designated hitters. Meanwhile, the New York Mets want a resolution, as the New York Post first reported, and that goes back to the original article we posted. Now, a lot of times I feel like the Blue Jays just pretty much use as a bargaining chip. But if that were the case, Alonso in Toronto isn't really the end of the world. Now, I know at this time we'll probably sit and say, man, you should have took that extension, brother. Like, what were you trying to do? It blew up in your face. And yeah, no one's looking to have a decline year, but I understand. Aaron Judge bet on himself. He won that game, and he got to be the captain, and he got a really massive contract. I understand all that, but you really had to deliver. Pete did not, kind of force his hand, and yes, he does not track well for increased or extended productivity in his age 34, 35, 36 season. So a 5, 6, 7, 8 year or 9 deal didn't seem feasible. But there really was an inkling that if someone was a homegrown talent and really beat the New York on this chest, that you'll get a sweetheart deal of however long they want, much like Nimmo or David Wright before him. But what say you on the chat below? It looks like, as it is right now, I mean, Pete Alonso is still unsigned, so it's not really a done deal, but looks like they pretty much have walked away. That Scott Boras and Pete Alonso's agency camp and the Mets have walked away from the table, looking like the Mets are trying to pivot. They've made some acquisitions today and yesterday to really fortify their options, given if Alonso won't be there next season. It's kind of a tragic story. I mean, look, you like fan favorites, no one's going to play for your team forever, but to see someone like this is crazy. And I understand people will probably get mad at Pete for doing that, but I won't. It's just a business, a really crummy business. And if someone ever says, how can you not be romantic about baseball? I'll remember this day. But moving on, we'll talk about the future now. Yesterday started off the international signing period, and of course, the team did not get Roki Sasaki, but we got instead was one of the highest-ranking Latin American prospects, Elian Pena, which is actually pretty interesting because even though Sasaki would be great, and Sasaki would probably be used in a 2025 case, the idea that the Mets are able to have an extended brand, a well-developed brand to acquire talent, even when they're young, 16, 17, 18, college, and have them be a destination franchise for the next generation of players. It's how you maintain a winning culture. Shout out to the New York Post on this one. Considering some scouts to be the next best international free agent outside of Sasaki, Pena, it's Elian Pena, signed a $5 million deal with the Mets on Wednesday, the first day of the international signing period. The Mets have been linked to Pena since last year and gave him the largest signing bonus in franchise history, far surpassing the 2.58 million given to Venezuelan catcher Giovanni Rodriguez a year ago. Look at those numbers, 5 million over 2.85. And so if you can't get Roki Sasaki, and not saying it's sour grapes, right? Really, we're trying to get in that mix, and it'd be cool if we had him as an arm this season, but knowing that's not on the table, going for the future and getting one of the highest ranked Latin American prospects in that period is always a plus. And it really puts you in mind of how this organization has been so much better from the front office, from the players, from the fans, from the culture, and of course, the scouts. By the way, if you're ever in the mood to, there is a documentary called Fielding Dreams. And it's about baseball scouts. You should probably check that out. I mean, that was a pretty entertaining feature-length documentary. I think my old film teacher directed that one. It's pretty of a small world there. But that is it for me on this edition of Mets Digest. Thanks so much for rocking with me through all the difficulties over the past 7 days. And technology, man, it's a real thing. Again, let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to talk about the Mets again when we have the chance, because it feels like now we know that what the team is going to be going for. A lot more news, a lot more signs will be coming down the pipe. That does it for me. And as always, it's LJM to the bitter end.